According to a public opinion survey, only 1 in 4 people know how to adequately treat a concussion. Where do you fall? Recently, there has been a lot of negative attention towards concussions in the media. But what makes a concussion so dangerous? Concussions affect the brain, a highly complex structure essential for human life. Due to this complex nature, any damage can be highly variable, and therefore the treatment options must account for this variability. Let's look at the hypothetical example of Mila. Mila was an active, happy, and energetic young girl. She was ambitious and had big plans for her future. Unfortunately, Mila had an accident and hit her head, resulting in a severe concussion. She began experiencing symptoms of a typical concussion. She felt dizzy, had severe headaches, had trouble focusing, and she found herself squinting in pain when a light was turned on and cringing at noises that would have otherwise been fine. Mila's life had turned upside down. At this stage, she decided it was time to see a doctor. In about 90% of concussion cases, symptoms are gone within 21 days of following classic protocol. However, the remaining 10% of cases have severe and long-lasting symptoms. These individuals can often end up feeling hopeless, like nothing is working and their brain is never going to get better. One up-and-coming treatment option for individuals like this is functional neurology, a promising therapy that has shown exceptional results in a diverse number of cases. But what is functional neurology? Let's find out from an expert in the field.
I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Anthony Lemmo, one of only 8 functional neurologists in Canada. He explained what it is the functional neurologists do.
We practice neuroplasticity. What does that mean? Well, it's the ability to regenerate or create axonal sprouting in neurons that are either damaged, some are working too hard, too much, or some aren't working at all. So what we're trying to do is stimulate, create neuroplasticity through various ways. Some are eye functions, proprioception, tactile sound.
Dr. Lemmo went on to explain what a concussion is and their potential variability.
Well, the word concussion is an interesting word because it doesn't necessarily mean if you have a concussion that you're going to be sensitive to light. There's some patients, they have a concussion, they're sensitive to light. You have some patients that they get concussed and they're dizzy, they're not sensitive to light. You have some patients, they hit their head, they can't be in front of screens. You have others that are fine. So the word concussion technically just means you hit your head.
In his office, they determine which parts of a patient's brain are affected by analyzing the patient's symptoms, as well as other diagnostics such as eye movement tasks. Here, Dr. Lemmo gives us brief insight on the relation between brain anatomy and concussion symptoms.
Where the area of injury is going to relate to the symptom. So for instance, if you have a mesencephalic issue or a midbrain issue, your chances of having sensitivity to light, not liking people up close, tachycardias, dysautonomias, that's usually a mesencephalic issue. If you have an issue in the pons, these are your horizontal eye functions, your REM, your sleep is going to be disturbed, you're going to have maybe facial tics, where you'll have movement disorders in the face.
But how do eye movements tell us about the brain? To help us understand how this works, Dr. Lemmo gave a more in-depth explanation of gaze holding, one of the many specific eye functions that are examined.
You do gaze holding, so if you're going to hold something in position for a few seconds, the area of the brain that creates the vertical gaze holding is also in the brain called the interstitial nucleus of Cajal. If you're going to do a lateral gaze holding, the area of the brain of that is the nucleus pulposus hypoglossal, which is in the medulla. So just by changing, if you're looking at a horizontal versus a vertical gaze, we're already looking at different neuronal pools in the brainstem to create that eye function. If somebody can't create an upward vertical saccade, there's a good probability that that mesencephalon isn't firing properly, and that patient will probably have sensitivity to light, and so on and so on.
Now that we know more about the mechanisms of functional neurology, let's hear what Dr. Lemmo wants people to know about treatment of the brain.
It's a team effort. It's not one person that works on a brain. And I think once people understand that, that it's not one person does the brain, I think the people that are staring at walls are hopeless would probably get a lot more benefit.
One way that functional neurologists attempt to work with neuroplasticity is by assigning patients exercises on an iPad. At first glance, many of these tasks may seem trivial. However, each of them strategically targets specific parts of the brain and can be tailored to each patient's needs. Here's an example. You're going to see a black dot on the screen, like this. Focus your eyes on that dot, and when a red dot appears on either side, shift your eyes to the opposite side, not to the red dot, and then return back to center. Here we go. Saccades are fast eye movements towards a stimulus. Anti-saccades go in the opposite direction of a stimulus and require inhibition of reflexive saccades. This is what you used in the exercise. Performance on anti-saccade tasks can reveal frontal lobe functioning, and practicing these tasks can benefit patients with certain neural deficits to these areas.
So, let's look at what's actually happening in the brain. Hits to the head can include a rotational force that can cause axonal damage. Patients that experience these forces at the time of injury often experience prolonged symptoms that do not improve through traditional treatment. Functional neurology works to stimulate neuroplasticity and axonal sprouting, a process through which existing axons grow new connections to make up for damaged or severed ones. This is accomplished through various kinds of stimulation, such as oculomotor, proprioception, auditory, and tactile. Such stimulation can be targeted towards various parts of the brain that are known to be involved with different symptoms. One of the reasons oculomotor stimulation is so effective is because it involves a large number of circuits distributed throughout multiple brain structures, providing an ideal avenue to induce neuroplasticity. Stimulating the eye movements corresponding to a particular area in the brain will not only improve the eye function itself, but also other functions related to that area. This is why eye movement exercises are effective in resolving a multitude of symptoms. Accordingly, if other functions related to a brain area are damaged, the relating eye movements are likely to be impaired. This provides an easily accessible diagnostic test, shown here, in which an individual's eye movements can be analyzed to determine which area of their brain may have been affected.
These techniques have been invaluable for some well-known professional athletes. The Canadian hockey player, Sidney Crosby, has missed 114 games in his career as a result of multiple concussions. Within weeks of seeing Dr. Carrick, the founder of functional neurology, Crosby was back on the ice, playing as good as ever. Functional neurology has shown outstanding results in a variety of ailments apart from concussions. Those include strokes, motor disorders, and ADHD. This data comes from a young boy who had severe eye tics. The colored lines represent eye movements, and as you can see, the movements are inconsistent and lack the steadiness associated with proper tracking of a visual stimulus. This data is from the same boy 3 weeks later after receiving treatment from Dr. Lemmo. He showed no eye tic and was able to properly follow visual stimuli. As you can see, applications of functional neurology are widespread and effective and have the potential to affect each of our lives. One of the things that makes functional neurology so unique is it does not overlook the complexity of the brain, but instead tries to understand the circuitry and anatomy at an elemental level. It uses the diagnosis to determine the affected brain regions. Although the applications are already diverse and extremely effective, there is still vast potential for growth in the field.
If you break your bone, everybody knows how long it's going to take. Everybody knows if there's an issue, you're going to go A, B, and C. You hit your head, you have quite a few issues and possibilities and probabilities and outcomes. So it's definitely needs more studies.
There are a couple major difficulties in accessing functional neurology, such as the limited number of practicing functional neurologists and the fact that only a fraction of the treatment costs are covered under insurance in Canada. We are on the verge of technologies that allow us to manipulate the brain, change circuitry, and impact neuronal firing on a specific level. Functional neurology is one of the leading contributors to these advancements, and it requires more of our attention.
We have more connections between our ears than all the internet connections in the world. Think about that.